Welcome. We're going to talk about how you can become a more effective copywriter by improving the environment in which you write. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Be sure to stay to the end. I'm going to give you 5 strategies to improve your writing. Now, in this program, we're going to talk about the tools, we're going to talk about the environment, and we're going to talk about the approach necessary to write high volumes of copy easily. Now, it's not necessarily the best approach for everybody, but it's the approach that we use, and I'm managing 8 websites. Many of the sites are newsletters, so 3 of them are newsletters. Now, these are in-house publications. I do manage a few sites for clients, but essentially, I'm writing sales letters, I'm writing landing pages, I'm writing YouTube scripts, I'm writing everything that I need to promote myself as a copywriter, as a consultant, as a marketer, and it actually goes beyond what we do here at Ad Briefings. So I'm with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, and I will admit I can write faster than I can publish. Now that puts me in a good position because I'm able to create content quickly. Have you ever had the problem or challenge where you're unable to come up with ideas quickly and easily, especially ideas that can be transformed into lead generation pieces, can be transformed into press releases, scripts, podcasts, all those other things. I think I have 200 or 300 podcast episodes and stuff, but none of that should discourage you because, again, I've been writing for more than 20 years. I've been active as a copywriter for about 15 years, and I've had a variety of clients, but the majority of my writing is actual technical writing. So let me start you with the basics. I have one place to put all of my writing. And within that place I store the actual writing, I have a process for writing. So the number one takeaway is, what is your process for writing? Without a process for writing, you don't have the framework to take ideas and turn them into drafts, and then from drafts, turn them into pieces and deliverables for clients. Now, if you don't have one place to put all your work, I would recommend starting with one directory or one network attached storage, one area that has everything backed up. In my environment, I have a network attached storage device. I think it's got like 20 terabytes on it or something, and I'm able to back everything up from that location. I know that if I write anything, I put it in one place. Many of my clients that have multiple editors, they're going to use a cloud-based system, and they're going to share documents in that cloud-based environment that has permission controls. So some of the environments that I've worked in or advised clients in are using SharePoint because that's their corporate requirement. Some of them are using OneDrive. Some of them are using Google Docs. So whatever platform you're using, you have one place to put your materials. Now, I have found it easiest to save those materials in the least common denominator. Now, what do I mean by that? Have you ever had the problem where you go to open a document from years ago and the current version of the software won't open it? I have that problem all the time with Camtasia, and Camtasia is what I use to record this right now. I've had this problem with Microsoft Office, WordPerfect. If you've been doing this for a while, you will have that challenge. So many years ago, I actually converted to use rich text format or text files to store all my documents. Now, I have since evolved, and I use basically Markdown. So Markdown is a language that's very simple, very similar to HTML, and I use Markdown because I'm able to store all my documents in one place and then have them protected using, and I'm using GitHub to store the documents. Now, again, folks, if this seems complex, it's a philosophy more than writing tools. It's the philosophy that whatever I write, it's stored in one location. All writing goes through the same editorial process, and everything I write focuses on a deliverable. So I'm not writing for my health. I'm writing for a newsletter, for a client, for a project, for something, and then all those materials are in one place. I organize those materials by project. As you can see, I have a project folder here. I have materials in here going back to 2001. There are materials in the system that go back even further. But again, these are project materials, 2001. They're all coded. So you need some kind of coding system. Now, again, the coding system can simply be the year it was produced. So in 2005 is when I started the coding system. And anything that starts with the letter A is from 2005. And then 0208, which you can see here on my Instant Credibility book, which is the latest book I just produced. 02 means February on the 8th day, and it's the first project of that day. So if there were additional materials for that day, there could be a B. But my point being is that we've tied now as copywriters, we've tied our project tracking to our coding for lead generation or for our lead tracking. So I use my one repository is GitHub. I use GitHub because it allows me to use version control. Version control is very important. Now, if you're using SharePoint, you can enable version control there. If you're using Word or different things, you can use version control there. The reason I don't use Word anymore or Microsoft Office anymore is because I am really working from different platforms. I work from Linux platforms. I might work from a laptop. I might work from this Windows PC here in this office or in another office. My point being is you want to be able to have one place to store all of your documents, but many places to access it. I don't know how many times you've been out on a client site and the client needs the previous revision, which they told you was garbage, but now they like that more than the revision you showed them today. And you want to be able to pull that up quickly and print it out or pull it up and show it on the screen. You need to be able to do that without carrying around terabytes of records on your local system. Now, I do a lot of video presentations, audio presentations. All of that is stored in a same environment. So I do have in this platform, which is Obsidian, drafts, recordings. I do a lot of transcriptions. I'm longtime newsletter subscribers know I have a whole program on dictation for success, being able to use your voice and write as fast as the speed of sound. The key here is with all the materials in one place, with one coding setup, I'm able to find everything quickly. But what I wasn't able to do under the Windows platforms is to be able to search. I need to be able to search, and I need to be able to contextually cluster documents. So later in this program, I'm going to show you how I'm using artificial intelligence and I'm using other types of knowledge management in order to find documents, ideas, concepts. Again, I don't want you to ever have this ad hoc approach where you have files everywhere and you really don't know what's going on with what. And maybe you got USB drives for your different client projects because they're getting pretty big. No, I want you to have an enterprise type environment where you're going to have a network attached storage. You're going to have some kind of central storage device that is backed up all the time. And then you're going to go ahead and store your files in a methodology that is easy to access. So the interesting thing about Markdown is that I can edit it using a variety of tools. I can pull it up in, this is Visual Code Studio. Obsidian allows me to have contextual elements such as these right here are to-do items. So there was a coding when I transferred some stuff from OneNote because I've used everything, folks. Sometimes in a corporate environment or when you're working with a client, you got to use the tools that they've got. But everything I've got is also backed up here. And so I can write it with the most minimal of tools. But what we've got here is is a project file. This tells me this document type is project. So document classification helps a bit. And I've got my tasks, which I'll show you a little bit of how these tasks all automate some of the work that we do, and then a little bit of notes, and then here's a link. But Markdown language is very simple. It's very easy. It doesn't get in the way of writing. I don't know if you've ever had the challenge where you're writing and, whether it's bolded or italicized or whether it's, all caps or not, has gotten in the way of the actual writing. The creativity got in the way of the process. Well, I eliminate that by using the Markdown language. Now, there's a lot of Markdown tools. Obsidian isn't the only one. There's collaborative cloud environments that use Markdown. What I'm sharing with you here, the most important takeaway, is to use a universal language. I had to take hours to convert stuff from open document format, from WordPerfect. Again, I've got 22 years of my files in one place now. And they were all in one place, but they're in different languages. There's 22,000 files in here. Now, again, what am I saving? I'm saving significant email messages. And so when I offer to answer questions of clients, I'm going to reply back to them in an email. My message board posts, anytime that I'm writing a draft article or responding to something, it goes into this system. I also have any draft materials. Now I do use version control, so I don't need to keep the really old drafts. But for example, this is a podcast on are you making certain mistakes with credibility? I have the name of the file here. I have kind of what's this is called a front matter. So I have the front matter keywords and stuff like that. I'll show you why these are important here in a little bit. I have what type of document it is. It's a podcast, and then it's a podcast on YouTube. See, there's so much context and information here that you'll tend to lose inside of Word because Word doesn't allow that depth of document, and Word doesn't allow the interconnectivity of the documents itself. So I don't have problems finding content. I'm not lost for ideas or concepts because I can search my system here. I have all my materials in one place so that I can recycle materials that worked well. Now we're going to talk a little bit here about the use of Google Analytics and how we convey what works as far as content, and we track that in the environment here. We also are going to convey, I'll share with you how I use the different tags in the metadata in order to be more productive as a writer, because we did mention the use of a process. Now, what's important about what we're covering here is that your system doesn't have to be, well, see, this system isn't really complex because the tools are very simple. But it may seem complex to a new person because you're not seeing a pretty diagram of the workflow. You're not seeing what these, a client asked me last night, what does this workflow mean? What does the status mean? Well, I have all this in my editorial guidelines. Now, the editorial guidelines here, and I'll show you in a little nicer format. This is kind of how it lays out. Now you can put this in any font that you want or anything. I like typewriter style. But my editorial guidelines are very specific about quality of materials, deliverables, and ultimately that we're curating content to create deliverables. We're not writing for the sake of writing. I think it was Mark Twain says, nobody writes except for money. Nobody but a fool writes for except money. His point was, you don't write unless you're getting paid. So I do capture notes. I do have all my social media posts for the last 20 years. I have all my other details here in one place. I go in here and extract. I go in here and rewrite. If I had a client 10 years ago in the construction industry, and I have a new client in the construction industry, I'm building on experience, not starting from scratch. Now that's difficult to do if your materials are all over the damn place. Now, I admit I had stuff on floppy disks. I had stuff on USB drives. And again, I had to go through the conscious effort of putting it all in one place. If you need help with that, or you need help deciding on what kind of system you're going to use, I can help you with those things. But it always pays to start where you're at right now. So again, I'm dropping the tips. One place for writing, you're going to have a minimum viable format. So that very simple. You can always lay it out later, or you can always, see, different clients have different things. Some clients use Adobe InDesign to lay things out. Some people are just doing stuff in Word. Some people are actually using LaTeX or other types of typesetting languages. If I write in the minimum viable format, which is Markdown, I can use tools like Pandoc to actually convert the document. I can pull this document into other things. And even if I want to just give the client a proof, I can just basically export the PDF and real quick to the downloads directory, end up with a PDF file that is moderately okay to look at. So I've all the time just drop a proof like this to make sure we're on concept. See, there's even tables in here. There's even structured text in here, a little bit of context and links. Now, what kind of content am I writing? And so while this is up on the screen, I'll share. I write articles. I write special reports. I write what's called the newscaster method. It's something that comes from Frank Kern. I write email messages. I write educational courses. But can you see how that what I write and where I write and the function of writing, the guidelines of writing are all in one place. And so if I had a client that gave me their editorial guidelines and they gave me the idea for a project, I would have the statement of work or my agreement in here as well. And then I would finally have the work, my research, my headlines, my writing, my first drafts, my deliverables. Now, what's great about Obsidian is I can actually store PDF documents in the Obsidian system, and I can view them, I can embed them, I can do quite a bit. But ultimately, one place for all. And I'll give you an example here. So this is a podcast about a credibility mistake, and it's going to point to my book on the subject. So you can see a placeholder right here for the URL for the new book. And I have some related documents linked in below. But look at this. The credibility sales hooks. These are associated with the book, credibility book. And so these are actual sales hooks for the book that I can easily, you see how I just popped it in a new window. I can easily reference these documents. And then I can even link back to the podcast if the podcast is relevant. So it's all keyword based. And now I've linked back to the process. I've associated these two documents. One thing that is different about my approach, and it's built on understanding enterprise document management environments. So a little background about myself. I write technical documents, control documents, procedural and policy documents. So I'm not just writing sales letters and lead generation. It's a very tiny part of what I do. The majority of the sales letters and lead generation I do are in-house. And the majority of the work I'm doing includes internal pitches, internal selling of ideas, internal presentations. I've written presentation materials for executives. I've written presentation materials for regulators or for presenting to auditors and regulators. When I do these things, I'm writing them in the client environment, but I'm following the same methodology. But I'm going the next level, kind of 4D thinking. By associating and linking documents together using contextual referencing, we're able to then make the work easier to use. Now, again, it doesn't matter what product you're in. In SharePoint, you can have a directory folder that has links to the files in that directory, and you can use URL links between documents. In a Google Docs environment, same thing, URL links. There's a couple more high-end like OpenText and FrameMaker and stuff, same concept. The key is, again, the methodology. So if I was to talk about a writing process for copywriters and not cover these environmental elements, I'd be doing you a disservice. And I know there's a lot of videos out there with writing process, but again, it's not hard to get the words down if you have all the component pieces. It's not hard to write a sales letter if you've got a pile of hooks, a pile of headlines, the key facts and features and benefits about the product, and then all you're doing is assembling. And so that's why in my editorial guidelines, I talk about the idea of Obsidian is to curate, not create. Okay, I got 22,000 documents here. I don't need to write. I don't need 23,000 documents. I got 22,000 already. What can I do to recycle those materials? Now, even in a client environment, I want to see their controls. I want to see their previous versions of a document. I want to see the format and structure that they like to use. So what are their guidelines? All these things come together so we can write more efficiently and, more importantly, effectively with the goal and objectives of the materials. Now, one thing about Obsidian that I enjoy is that it has tags. And now the good thing about Markdown is I can use tags whether or not the product I'm editing in allows tags. I don't know if that makes sense, but these tags in Obsidian are contextual. But ultimately, if I would just search on a tag term, so this is, you see a tag there named Twitter. If I'm going to VS Studio, I'm going to search and I'm going to look for Twitter. It can equally show me all the documents that contain the tag Twitter. See, I don't have to be in any particular product in order to work. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So no longer do I have to make sure I got the right version of Word to open a document. No longer do I have to make sure that the layout tool that I have is right. My job as a writer, as a copywriter, as a marketer is to write the copy. So anyway, let's start talking about how do we do the marketing side? How do we track? So this is the system that we have for writing. How do we track the process of writing so that we know a document is moving through this environment? With 22,000 files, how do we know where we are in the editorial process? Well, I use a system that uses tags that are based on idea, draft, review, proof, publish, recycle. Now I got a quick little tip sheet in here that we'll just go ahead and pop it up real quick so I can show you and explain it. But everything I write follows this status concept. So right here is our front matter, and I always have status and workflow. Now, again, we can go in more depth if you have specific questions, but my editorial process is there's only one editorial process, no matter who I'm writing for, and that's you come up with an idea, you flesh out a draft for that idea. It could be an outline, it could just be some key concepts. Then you review your draft, and then you proof the draft. So I might have a draft that I send to a client and they give me feedback. I might have something that we discuss as a group of subject matter experts. And then once that's been proofed, it gets published. Now, as a marketer, I add additional elements. So if I publish a new podcast, and I've got hundreds of podcasts, I then want to promote the podcasts. Because if you haven't noticed today, that just posting something on the interwebs, just putting something on YouTube doesn't get you traffic. It doesn't get you leads. It doesn't get you sales. So again, you've got to put, after it's published, you got to promote it. Now, even when you publish something to a client, like a sales letter, you got to go in there and pitch it. You got to say, hey, look, we went through the editorial process. Here's what we came up with. Here's why we think it's going to work. Here are the appropriate tests to test our concept here. And so now we're going to drive traffic to the sales letter to see it work. One of the biggest complaints I hear from copywriters is they write copy the client never uses. Now, as long as you get paid, it doesn't matter as much. But wouldn't it be better if the client saw the power of your copy and was able to have evidence and proof that you delivered something of value and they kept coming back? Now, my process also has recycle and then complete. So there is a point where my documents are done. So if I publish a book on Amazon, it's going to be done for a little while. Now, I might extract from the book to write articles. I might do other things to recycle, but it's marked complete in the system because there's no sense writing the book again until I have a significant amount of evidence or leads that tells me I need to write it again. So this is the editorial status. Now, as we have prospect, present, and close, there are other elements about the types of content that goes to individuals. So if we have lead generation materials, if we have sales materials, they're going to go through these cycles a little bit differently, but there will only be one file for each document. So if I take a sales letter and I digest it into lead generation pieces, as we've talked about in previous programs, I'm going to have one sales letter, and then I'm going to have an individual document for each. So I used to have these big giant documents that would have like whole email series in them, like 5 or 6 email messages. Well, now I break those out into individual pieces because we know that when it comes time to recycle the email, what we sent out on our email list could end up being a blog post later. It could end up being a presentation. It can end up being something different. So again, does your writing environment deliver to you that kind of flexibility where you can simply make a copy of a file, rewrite it, and then put it back in your editorial process? I sometimes talk about this in a way that I sound dismissive, but this system is so easy to use. It's based on, it would work if you just had notepads. In fact, I do have large reference sheets of what's in binders. A lot of you folks may know. So like, here's a proof of my established instant credibility. And a lot of you folks know that I keep these client logs. So these are engineering notebooks, and they have references on every page. So I do have a catalog in here online to keep track of what's in these books so that I can reference notes I've made during meetings. Sometimes you can't bring a laptop in a meeting, but you can take a note in a notebook. So what do we have here on the screen? Well, I use a series of dashboards in order to keep track of what I'm doing. I never want to sit down and be ready to write and have that energy to write, but not know what to put on the page. Have you ever had that experience? You're either staring at a blank page or you're ready to write, but you don't know what you should be writing. Well, in my case, I know that anything that's in the stage of published material, so these items, there's 17. And by the way, this is controlled by a little bit of code, and I limit what I see on my dashboard to 250 items. Okay. Now you don't need to learn how to write this code. It's very easy to do, and somebody can help you do that just one time, and then you use it many times. But I only show 250 items here. So there are several thousand articles in this environment, but these 17 are ready to be published. Now, if I'm looking for work to do, whether I'm promoting my own newsletter or I'm promoting something for a client, because I do recommend you get long-term maintenance contracts with your clients where maybe you're producing 12 newsletter articles a year, or you're promoting their stuff on their website, or you're helping them with their blog. I know that the only thing I need to do with these published materials is to open them up and move them to the next stage. That's all we got to do. So I'm going to open new tab. This is a strategic information gathering article from 2009. Well, this one is ready to publish. It's already been published. Here's the permalink of where that's published. See, here's the article materials. Here's the excerpt. Well, look at that. This excerpt, I could recycle that into a social media post and then link it to this document here, and I've done some promotion. Do you see how easy this becomes? Now, here's actually the URL for my, let me just show you how harebrained I can be, but actually how productive this type of environment makes me. I saw earlier a stub for my book where it needs a landing page. And I see here the content. I'm just going to flip tabs, hit Control V, and now it saves automatically. And now I've updated this. It's ready to go. Now I'm going to have to, it'll be more ready to go when we talk about the Google Analytics tags. But do you see how easy this was? Now you might be asking about, well, how do we do grammar? Well, back on this original article here, I actually use outside of this environment, Grammarly, but I use Grammarly inside the Hemingway editor. And now that's a power tip, by the way, because one of the things about Word is that it's constantly telling you what you spelled wrong. It's constantly making recommendations. It's constantly doing stuff that distracts from the writing itself. So my editorial process gets the draft on paper. It then goes to the review stage where I flesh out a little additional information. Now I see I'm missing the permalink, and we clean that up later. But then ultimately, my proof, I come in here and I can do my Grammarly. Now I'm not going to keep this because I'm doing it really quick while we're talking, but I would read it because Grammarly is not always right. Grammarly very often will tell you stuff that's not necessary to update, especially when you're writing language-oriented copywriting. So, okay, do you see what we're doing here? We're in a writing environment that is so easy to use that even while I'm doing a podcast or a video about how to set up your environment, that I could be making changes and modifications. I almost automatically go into the writing mode of getting work done. Nothing is more important in copywriting or when you're doing client assignments than getting work done on time and within budget. It's extremely valuable. But let's say I'm doing copy for myself and I'm promoting a newsletter. I've got a piece of material and I want to know that it generated leads. See, because I got my keywords in here. I got my description. So I have materials I can use to start a pay-per-click campaign. So we can go from editorial of materials that we know have published and they're ready to promote. I can open up a piece of material. I've got all the material, what I need at my fingertips. Now the next step is getting it coded. Now the coding is extremely important. This is my dashboard for Google Analytics UTM codes, which are now embedded in all the documents. I don't know if you've ever had the challenge of trying to keep track of your UTM codes in kinds of spreadsheets. And so now you've got all your link tracking in one document and then your actual creative someplace else, and never the two shall interact. Well, I decided I didn't like that anymore. So I cleaned up my environment. And so Obsidian allows me to do this dashboard. This dashboard includes all my catalog codes. As I mentioned earlier, I have one coding system for all of my documents, and it's coded by topic or product. So every one of these represent a product that I've offered over time. And ultimately, that's the destination of any content I create. When you do this for your client, this could be the SKU for the client. But what we've got here is it's my UTM campaign code. And if I go open one of these documents, I actually have in the front matter all the UTM coding for this specific document. And I don't know if you can see on this one right here, but the coding is embedded. Now, this could be a short link when we publish it, but right here it's embedded raw, and that allows me to search for a certain thing. So let me say, for example, I need to get all my Spreaker is the platform that I use for my podcast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got Spreaker. The traffic isn't so well over there. I want to get some traffic. Or even better, the traffic is great. And I want to find out what else I can promote. I can just go over here to search UTM Medium Spreaker and find all my content that has Spreaker codes. See, so I don't store the URL shortened because I care about what I see in Google Analytics, not about whether I'm using Bitly to shorten or I'm shortening at my own website. But again, because the UTM codes are stored with the creative content itself as part of the metadata for my writing, I can now say, hey, what other content do I have that's associated with this particular campaign? And of that content, what content is ready to go from draft to review? What content is ready to go from proof to publish? Can you see how easy this is, folks? And I know I'm talking quickly and I'm covering a lot of things and I'm jumping around a little bit, but again, this is an overview of a writing environment that makes you more productive. I've used this type of environment in a multi-editor, multi-writer environment. So you have multiple copywriters producing materials. You might split a sales letter up into, somebody's doing lead generation, somebody's doing the pay-per-click, somebody's doing a lot of other things. And then ultimately you hand that off to the people who load it into the platforms. But it also works very well for somebody doing something all by themselves. And using the coding, using the one central place to store documents, using the metadata, I'm able to be a lot smarter about my writing. Again, because I want to focus on deliverables, not writing. I love writing. But again, if I don't publish the stuff, what good is it? I got 22,000 files here. If they're not published, what good is it? In fact, I had a website that I was trying to migrate. So this is an old website, Youngtora. I was trying to migrate this website, but there's more than 1,000 articles on here. And every one of these articles is inside my system. And so like here's key performance. I just love showing people how fast and easy this can be. And by the way, this works in any platform if you set it up the right way. But look, this is an article, key performance areas successful managers consider before starting on any project. My background is project management. My background is business development. My background is risk management. I can show you how to make this work for you. But look at this. This article is published. I want to go find the article in my system. I wait a couple seconds. I've got the article, the original article. Let's say this article is getting a lot of traffic. Now you can see it's kind of dirty looking. I can clean that up. We're not going to clean it up right now. But this is from 2009. And the only thing I'm going to do is because I just found it. I'm going to go ahead and just insert the permalink. But my point being is that you don't have to, none of this has to be perfect, but it will be done. So my permalinks tend to be down here. Let me just permalink : . Now this is a contextual reference. I just added a variable called permalink that has this value so that I can query it later in case I want to find all content that has this type of thing. And by the way, I'm just going to do this paragraph because all you folks out there still using Word, using Google Docs that don't understand the power of text documents, this would have been hours of see how it crosses lines. First off, it doesn't matter that it crosses lines because Markdown, when I render it into a readable format, it puts all the lines back together. It really doesn't care about the spaces. So I don't really have to edit this. I don't really have to do anything to make it nice and neat. I can just start going in here and making my revisions. But if I would have had to do this by hand, I'd have to highlight each little line, make sure I go to the end of the line. Okay, we're almost there. Make sure I had a space there. Or because we're in text and we have the power of text manipulation, and later before we end the program, we'll talk a little bit about how I'm using Python and I'm using artificial intelligence. And we might skip the Python part because that can be difficult. But This platform is going to allow me to merge the broken paragraphs in the section I highlighted, and I just did a day's worth of work in a second. Now, if we weren't talking right now, I would highlight this and clean it up and send it away, but I don't have to. Again, when I render it to read it, it takes all the extra spaces out of it. It gives me bold. It gives me whatever I need. If I needed to give a client a proof, I could just simply go here, export the PDF, and give them a proof. A big recommendation here, by the way, is never give your clients a Word document proof, even if they want it, because they're going to edit it. They're going to make changes to it. They're going to cause problems. I'd rather them email me back a list of changes based on a PDF. The PDF gives me an idea of what kind of document, what was it, the document look like when I gave it to them, and then I'm not sorting out all their track changes. But here in a document, they can highlight if they can come in here and highlight and add comments too. See, they could come in and say, oh, I like this pitch. And so they can add sticky notes and such. I like this, and then now I've gotten my feedback in the PDF document. Now, again, this could be a whole 3-day course. If you've got a small marketing agency, if you've got even a large marketing agency. One environment I did this with had 25 editors, and we did it in their platform. You don't have to use the same tools I'm using because the concepts are universal. The concepts help you, again, have one place for writing and a single writing process. It helps you have minimal viable formats so that you're not spending a lot of time dicking around with whether you should have big fonts or little fonts. It has a focus on deliverables. It has track changes so that people aren't stepping on each other's changes. But those track changes are external to the document. So they're like code revisions. And ultimately a fast and easy way to give people drafts and to get feedback. Now I can show you the code revisions. We don't really have a way to get interactive here, but we are using I'm using GitHub, and I'm just going to real quick touch into here. And again, this program is really about how do you become more productive. I'm showing you how I became more productive and how I've evolved this system over time. But when I was using different software revision tools, it was always the same. I lost a file, somebody stomped on a file, the computer crashed, whatever, just pull the old version. That's it. And to me, this is such a no-brainer because I've saved so much time and effort. I certainly hope you're not confused about this. And if you are, please make sure you ask questions. What I want to show you real quick is that 11 hours ago, I made a change, which was the end-of-day session closeout. So at the end of my day, I check in all my work. Whatever state it's in, I've documented internally to the document using those to-do items. And now I imported it. What if I want to see what work I did yesterday? What if you have editors working for you and you want to see what work they did? Well, I'm just going to click on this little change and I can see all of the changes I made. So I modified 13 additions, 8 deletions, and I just edit these files. If I want to look at a specific file, I click over here. Okay, so there was just some contextual updates and file name changes. The red tells me what was removed, and the green tells me it was added. So I basically serialized this file. Now we don't have to get into that. I have it all written down about how that works. I use file serialization in order to have a unique key in every file. That way I can tell what file I gave to the client. Because if I send them a file called improved speech recognition and they send it back to me with changes, and I don't know whether I sent them the one from yesterday or the one from last year or the one from 12 years ago because I'm recycling materials, these serial numbers help me with that. And I can increment these serial numbers accordingly. And you saw that they carry along in the PDF. But can you see how easy this is? And by the way, I can come in here and say, hey, this change needs to be redone. I can open tickets. But again, that's maybe the next level. The first thing is having everything in one place, having everything organized, and then ultimately having individual documents coded for your link tracking. What's more important than how many articles you can write on your website is knowing which articles generate leads and which leads become sales. That way, using these UTM parameters, you can go back and know what campaign needs to be improved. Now, in my personal business for the newsletters, I don't do a lot of pay-per-click, but my clients, they do pay-per-click. So they may have different mediums based on the pay-per-click a platform, whether they're using like tablet. There's a couple article pay-per-clicks. There's a couple headline generators. Um, I can talk about UTM codes at another time. The key is that if I see something in analytics and I need to find out, I find out that this campaign is converting like crazy. I want to be able to, while I'm talking with somebody, while my client is on the phone saying, "Oh my gosh, this campaign's rocking it. Find me more content on that topic." I want to be able to pull up more content on that topic. I want to be able to pull it. Oh, is it agricultural land assessments? A similar topic. Let me go ahead and clean this file up. And I have a 1 minute and 23-second video. This is the video's file name. I go to the one place that I store all my documents. I find that file. I start merging and purging, and I get that sucker online in a matter of minutes. Now, you may not want to respond that fast to your clients because they'll expect it all the time, but ultimately, I'm able to quickly and easily, for my own materials, not spend a lot of time, and then I can spend more time with my clients. So let's get into something a little more exciting. I know you probably saved hours investing this 40 minutes in me by understanding the key principles of having a better writing environment, a writing environment that pushes quality content towards the publication, towards the delivery. So whether you're writing special reports, whether you're producing technical documents for your clients, whether you're producing sales letters or other materials, they all come together quickly and easily from one place. We've talked about the Google UTM codes. I can quickly, without having to search, which I could search if I want, I can quickly understand my inventory. I can get a quick overview of my tag inventory. If I'm looking for a piece of copy that I need to send out, I want to do something that worked well, I can find it easily and quickly. Let's close that out. I have my editorial process. My editorial process is the same process, whether I'm producing a video or audio, whether I'm producing text or anything. And again, I know that the only thing I need to do in a writing session is move a document from its current state to the next state or stage, and that keeps it all together. I have some Kanbans that I'm using, which I don't do as often because these required manual, but this is a Kanban. A Kanban is I move the items between columns. This represents special reports and large deliverables, so campaigns, complete newsletters, projects, reports. By the way, look at this. This is an AWeber autoresponder campaign from years ago, and I have the links to the individual articles. And then as I re-edit these articles and put them back online, I'm taking a campaign from 2006 that worked pretty well and putting it back online. I'm mixing in material from 2013 and 2008 and so on in order to make what was old new again. Why should I rewrite a marketing campaign that worked well in the past? We talked about how quick and easy it is to edit. All these things are saved. And because I made a little bit of changes, oh my gosh, I've been talking on the phone. What changes did I make? I can go in here to my Visual Studio. This is for the little nerdy types out there, but this could be, again, it could be some other revision system, but I can easily see what changes I made. So I added a permalink. I reformatted some paragraphs, and that all looks good. So, changes made while on webinar, and I can simply just commit those changes. Now there's a copy on my local machine, but there's also a copy as soon as I hit sync changes on GitHub, which I can have clients. Well, I don't usually have clients access my Obsidian repository, but I might open a project up there for clients that are open to using GitHub. Now, I mentioned I'm using Python. I mentioned I'm using some text tools and some artificial intelligence. And I think that's the exciting part to close on. So once you have a single repository, once you have a place to put your materials, once you have a minimal viable format, once you have a editorial process, you can start doing some more complex work that saves a tremendous amount of time. Now, I could include a link in the description, but this is my my text tools that I use to convert all of my documents, WordPerfect, Word, rich text format, open doc format, and then put it in the format that I'm using for Obsidian, which is the markdown format. Now, I already had thousands of documents already in markdown, so I didn't need to use this on everything. The next thing we're working on is taking all the PDF files, because every deliverable I gave to client was in a PDF form, which they usually archived, or it was a print-ready PDF. I actually have started writing the code for converting, and this hasn't synced yet, so I'm not going to mess with that. I already started writing the code for and look how easy it is. I noticed something didn't look right. Now I'm synchronizing the changes. Now when I go back into the document has been updated with the code and such. Again, you don't need to know how to code. A lot of the stuff's out there. You can hire somebody to do it. If you have the right writing environment, then you can quickly and easily use scripting to text mine, to do sentiment analysis, to do other things. So the first thing I was going to show you is the contextual graph, or a graph view, of my content in this repository. Now, this is exciting because I like to see the little bubbles grow, but let me tell you what it means more than anything else. So what you're seeing here is every document in my repository and its relationship to other documents in the repository. So let's say you've been writing for a few years and you got the single repository to store all your documents. You can now see which documents are related to each other and then start using these content clusters to go and make new content. So my first book was a collection of all my newsletter articles and questions related to that topic from my newsletter. I had to do that by hand. It took months to get together. It was such a pain in the butt. Now I can say, oh, what topics are related to Wells Fargo? What topics are related to Dan Kennedy? What topics are related to Jay Abraham? Now, I use a lot of person approaches because the Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips newsletter, my role is a reporter, and I'm curating and reporting on best practices used by top level gurus. Now, originally it was because we're going to do an affiliate site, but I figure Dan Kennedy explains it so well. Why should I reinvent the wheel? I could just introduce Dan Kennedy because I've used his materials and it works fine. But I also have concepts as well. So what articles have I written about demographics? Now, all these little dots are near each other because they are similarly related. So there's a bunch of fancy math going on here. And now you could do this with Python and write your own scripts, or you could just let Obsidian do it for you. But of all my articles related to Dan Kennedy, there's direct response is a similar topic, and that topic is similar to Gary Halbert. So if I need to write a direct response article, and it's going to be ideas and concepts from known gurus about direct response, I want to be looking at the fact that demographics play a role in direct response, that Dan Kennedy is a direct response teacher, and Gary Halbert is a direct response teacher. So I can borrow their credibility and celebrity factor talking about the response, the topic of direct response, but I can even drill down even further. What has to do with direct response? Well, reader attractive content to the reader. And now this me wealthy contractor, some of these things aren't going to be a perfect match, but at a big level, can you see how everything networks together? Now, some of these colors are keyword searches because I do have some key topic areas of risk management, permaculture, job search, or career development. So the blue is job search and career development. So I might be saying, well, look, I got to produce a 5,000 word essay on career development for high income professionals. I come over here where I got a cluster. I can say, okay, well, what do we got here? Okay, we got a job search action plan and supply chain jobs. So I had a website called Job and Procurement. So a lot of my clients were procurement professionals because, again, the systems for tracking documentation, improving business process, risk management related to vendors is my area of expertise. So, again, I was lead generating with the job search elements and then offering consulting services to the individuals who found the career development tools that I had useful. But what I'm showing you here, please don't miss it, because all my documents are in one place, because they're all contextually linked using a minimum viable document format, which is text, and they are all structured text, including metadata. I am now able to find a cluster of content relate to something of value that's related to my project. Now, there's other ways of doing this, but can you see how how powerful this is. If I want to look at, these are agricultural ones. The yellow is permaculture and agriculture. I can talk about historic homestead design, and I can use this cluster of content. It doesn't get any easier than this. Or does it? It does. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about text mining and how I'm using artificial intelligence before we wrap up. So I have some hobbies, and one of my hobbies is recycling or upcycling clothing. You guys might notice I dress a little weird. It's because I don't buy new clothes. I'll buy new suits and ties and stuff sometimes, but I would rather have a vintage suit. I would rather have something that's been upcycled because the material quality is so much better. The use of natural fibers is so much better. But I wrote an article. I'm getting familiar with Shishiko stitching, and so I took a picture of a pair of jeans that I stitched, and then I wrote an article about the concept. This is going to go on my permaculture homesteading website. I wrote all this stuff. Now let's say this one is 881 words, but look, I'm trying to write a 2,000 word essay. Let me show you something that's extremely powerful. So Obsidian, I'm able to come in here, and I'm going to use the Jacquard model. Jacquard model is going to help with, it's refreshing right now. So what the Jacquard model is doing is helping me find articles that are similar to the content that I have up on the screen. So I need to write, let's just say this, the client's project is to write a special report on borrow or upcycling clothing. I go in here, I'm going to lock this right here, and now I have our additional content to work from. I have eco-friendly clothing. I have borough style clothing. I have natural fiber clothing. I have a story about a Texas millionaire. Okay, so one of the things that we talk about often is that many millionaires and high income professionals and really wealthy people don't look that way. They look like normal people. They don't look like, they're not driving Bentleys. They're not driving fancy. Now that kind of fancy stuff attracts people if you're selling a business opportunity, but if you're selling to people who are actually rich, they tend to think about, and here's the idea of power of thrift. How do we get the most out of the money that we have? So if I got to go from 881 words, I can use artificial intelligence. I can use machine learning. I can use, this is text mining or natural language processing. And this is telling me that these materials are related to my original document that's on the screen. So now I can build an outline because, again, all my copies in one place. It's contextually linkable. Folks, if you got questions about this, you better ask them because this is the way of the future. I know everybody's talking about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, but if you don't have the right writing environment to use those tools, then you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. So let me show you how I create content super quickly. I'm not going to go ahead and write the outline, but from what I'm seeing here, the big idea of my overall article would be environmentally responsible upcycling of clothing. Okay? Why is that important? Well, because natural fiber clothing lasts longer. You can choose to be more conservative with your clothing, more traditional with your styles, and you can buy clothing once and use it for many years. There's a thrift value in this, that you are getting more from your clothing. There's the philosophical value of this as exhibited by the Japanese culture during the Edo period. They would try to get maximum wear out of their clothing to make the most of their textiles. But this became a philosophical method of reinvesting in the stories and the culture of your clothing. And so your gardening clothes tell the story of gardening. Your formal clothes tell the story of formal, and you're making them more beautiful over time as you use them. Now, I can also talk about how there's a actual functional style that does mending rather than new, and it makes very high-end clothing. And there's a reason why rich people will tend to buy good quality thrift rather than buying brand new. And then I can talk about that as well. But do you see what we've done here? Again, this is mind-blowing to some people that we can, in one click, get all the materials we need for an outline to take an 800-word article and turn it into a 2,000-word article. And I would just simply do that by by curating or mashing up materials that I already own. Yeah, I own the rights to everything that's in this database. And then that can bridge out to new items. Now, if the question comes up, what product am I going to offer? Well, I see down here that there's a product called Unusual Savings Secrets. Now, when I mouse over something, you're going to see different wording here. So you see that how it says intentional thrift living? Those things are interconnected. So if I'm going to mention about intentionally living a thrifty life, not a cheap life, but you're going to be surrounded by quality antiques, quality clothing, quality life, minimalist living, but you have a very enjoyable life, I would want to make sure that I pitch the unusual saving strategy secrets, of which one of them is to live intentionally thrifty, well within your means. Do you see how this works? Now I'm going to wrap up with one more, because maybe you don't have a specific article to work from, and you are going to ask the system itself what articles are already prominent and have the potential to turn into reports. So I have a program about writing special reports for fun and profits, and it's about writing these special reports to use in lead generation, positioning yourself as an expert. And so I'm going to ask my 22 years of materials, what topic areas do I already have authority and content to look at? So we're using what's called the hits method, not like Justin hits, but we're basically looking at the linkages between content. Now, this is what Google does to tell whether or not you have any authority on your website. All these numbers are relative, and it tells me that my area of authority in this set of data is going to be risk management and subject matter expertise. So I happen to be writing a book on risk management. And so this is showing me what materials have risen to the top and have the most links and the most development around that particular area. Folks, this stuff is immensely powerful. Now, again, let's do a quick wrap up. And I promised you again, because this is artificial intelligence and tools, we actually chat. I'm running a little bit low on time. I do have content from ChatGPT in here. I do use that on a regular basis. And let's just look at something that I've pulled, like how to train ChatGPT on a private data set, because I'm going to train the platform on my materials here. And so I've got content written on that. It's 2,100 words as well as code samples. See, I told you I wrote some technical documents. But again, if I have artificial intelligence assisting me, I'm able to write faster, cleaner, with less effort, because all my materials are in one place. They're in a minimal viable document format that's easy to read. They are focusing on deliverables. So this is about creating reports, not about collecting materials. I don't put notes in here for my health. I put notes in here for profit. It's about having a simple and universal writing process, a universal coding system. It's about having the ability to work as a team. I can have 50 editors in here if I need to, and they're not going to stomp on each other. It's about being clear about your objectives, having revision systems, being able to put content up quickly, being able to edit content outside of the writing environment. Your writing environment needs to be about writing. Your editorial environment, which is your grammar and your readability and use of words, can be outside of that environment. It's about being productive and profitable with your writing. And lastly, if you've got any questions, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips. You can visit us at adbriefings.co.uk and go down to the contact page and simply, type in your questions right there, and I'll answer them in another program. Again, I know I cover these things quickly because the real secrets are not 15-minute podcasts. The real secrets are not, like a 2-second twitch. It's not me doing some dance or something. It is outcomes that come from writing like a professional. And so if you're a copywriter, a marketer, if you have a small agency or a large agency and you want to boost the productivity of your team, you want to capture more of the ideas in a way that are usable so that you can even do brainstorming sessions. And I hate to do this to you, but it's just so easy. Editorial topics. I have years worth of editorial topics for the different newsletters I have. There's no shortage of ideas. The biggest problem I have is getting out materials that are deliverables. So this year I'm focusing a lot on writing more books and getting them onto Amazon, and of course writing more materials for my paid subscribers. But again, the worst worst thing that happens is what gets in the way is paid client work. So I'm not complaining. I'd love to be a best-selling author, but if I'm going to get paid $50,000 to write something for a client, I might as well get paid to write something for a client. A lot of this other stuff's an afterthought, but I don't want it to be an afterthought. If you have questions, visit me at www.adbriefings.co.uk, where we help copywriters be more productive. Now, granted, the website is not always up to date, but I'm staying true to our theme that we want to help you in the business of copywriting. There's a lot of places that'll tell you how to write copy, but if you can't get that copy delivered, if you can't get that copy developed and in front of target buyers, then you won't be able to mature your business as a copywriter. So that's what we're here for. And again, visit us, comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.